323 BC. The death of Alexander the Great in the heart of Babylon sent shockwaves across the ancient world. The prophecy of Daniel 8:8 had come to pass. His empire, vast and unconquerable in life, was left vulnerable, without a designated heir. What followed was a chaotic scramble for power. His generals, the Diadochi, turned from loyal commanders into fierce rivals. The empire, once unified under Alexander's brilliant leadership, would now fracture in a series of brutal wars. By 322 BC, the First War of the Diadochi had erupted. The unity of Alexander's empire shattered as his generals, Ptolemy, Seleucus, Antipater, and Antigonus, divided up the vast territories from Egypt to Babylon. They were not content with mere governance. Each saw himself as the rightful ruler, the successor to Alexander's throne, and they would stop at nothing to claim what they believed was their destiny. In 321 BC, the power struggle reached a deadly climax when Perdiccas, Alexander's regent and one of his most trusted generals, was assassinated by his own men. His death marked the disintegration of central authority, and what had once been an empire soon became a collection of warring kingdoms. Ptolemy I. Soter secured Egypt, establishing the mighty Ptolemaic kingdom, while Seleucus, the first Nicator, took control of Babylon, laying the foundations for the Seleucid Empire. Macedonia, the heart of Alexander's empire, was not immune to the infighting. Cassander, son of Antipater, seized power in 317 BC after overthrowing Olympias, Alexander's mother, and solidified his rule over Macedonia. Antigonus I Monophthalmus, the one-eyed general, declared himself king in 315 BC and set his sights on reunifying the empire by force. The battle lines were drawn, and the conflict between the Diadochi would culminate in the pivotal Battle of Ipsus in 301 BC. There, Antigonus fell, and with him, any hope of restoring Alexander's united empire. The death of Antigonus marked the end of an era. The once glorious empire of Alexander was now carved into independent kingdoms, giving birth to the Hellenistic world. Seleucus controlled much of the east, establishing the Seleucid Empire, while Ptolemy and his descendants ruled Egypt. In these new kingdoms, Greek culture mixed with the ancient traditions of the East, creating a unique blend that would shape the centuries to come. In 300 BC, Seleucus founded Antioch, a city destined to become one of the most illustrious of the ancient world. The intellectual currents of the age also surged forward. The Stoic school of philosophy, founded by Zeno of Citium in 298 BC, began shaping the minds of the Hellenistic world. In Egypt, the great Ptolemy I Soter passed in 283 BC, leaving the throne to his son, Ptolemy II Philadelphus. It was a time of cultural and intellectual flourishing, and yet the threat of war was never far away. Around 250 BC in the city of Alexandria, under the rule of the Ptolemaic kings, a monumental project known as the Septuagint was initiated. 72 Jewish scholars, as tradition holds, were commissioned to translate the Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, into Greek. This translation made the Jewish scriptures accessible to the Hellenistic world, bridging the gap between Jewish and Greek cultures. Over time, other books of the Hebrew scriptures were translated as well, including texts that would later be known as the Apocrypha. These writings, such as 1 and 2 Maccabees, Tobit, Judith, and others, captured additional Jewish traditions, historical accounts, and theological reflections, many of which were set against the backdrop of foreign rule and the Jewish struggle for identity and autonomy. But even as the Hellenistic kingdoms rose, a new threat was emerging: Rome. The Romans, who had been steadily expanding their influence, now had their sights set on the rich and powerful territories of the East. The great Hellenistic kingdoms continued to rise and fall, but the ripples of Rome's ambitions could be felt across the Mediterranean. With each passing year, Rome extended its reach. In 218 BC, Hannibal of Carthage led his army across the Alps to challenge Rome itself. The Second Punic War had begun. Yet Rome endured, and in 202 BC they dealt Hannibal a crushing blow at the Battle of Zama, securing their dominance over the western Mediterranean. Back in the eastern Mediterranean, The conflicts between the Seleucids and Ptolemies continued. The First Syrian War erupted in 274 BC, drawing the lines of power and competition even more sharply between these two Hellenistic superpowers. By 268 BC, however, a new power was on the horizon. Far in the east, Emperor Ashoka of India ascended to the throne, destined to spread the teachings of Buddhism far and wide. In 280 BC, the Pyrrhic War began, marking the start of Rome's relentless march toward dominance. Pyrrhus of Epirus, a Greek king, tried in vain to defend the Greek colonies of Italy from the rising power of Rome. Although Pyrrhus won battles, the cost of victory was so great that the term Pyrrhic victory was born, a victory so costly it was hardly worth the price. In 1870 BC, Antiochus III, also known as Antiochus the Great, died, leaving his son Seleucus IV to rule the vast Seleucid Empire. But the Seleucid rule over Judea would soon become contentious. When Antiochus IV Epiphanes ascended to the throne in 175 BC, his reign would be marked by cruelty, especially toward the Jewish people. His attempts to impose Greek culture and religion on Judea culminated in a series of acts that would spark one of the most famous revolts in history. In 167 BC, Antiochus IV Epiphanes committed what the Jewish people saw as an unforgivable desecration of their faith. He erected a pagan altar inside the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, ordering the sacrifice of swine, an abomination in Jewish law. This act of defiance against Jewish religion and tradition pushed the people to the brink. The Maccabean revolt had begun. The revolt was led by a man who would become a symbol of Jewish resistance, Judas Maccabeus. Alongside his brothers, Judas gathered a band of Jewish fighters, determined to resist the powerful Seleucid army. With unmatched zeal, the Maccabees waged a guerrilla war against their oppressors, employing swift and strategic strikes. Their knowledge of the terrain and their passion for religious freedom allowed them to win battle after battle, despite overwhelming odds. In 164 BC, after years of fighting, the Maccabees achieved a decisive victory. They entered Jerusalem, reclaiming the temple, which had been desecrated by Antiochus. With their faith restored and their independence achieved, the Jewish people rededicated the temple to the God of Israel in a ceremony of great joy and reverence. This event would later be commemorated every year in the festival of Hanukkah. That same year, Antiochus IV Epiphanes died, leaving the Seleucid Empire weakened and in turmoil. The Maccabean victory marked the beginning of a period of Jewish independence, which would last for nearly a century. The Hasmonean dynasty, founded by Simon Maccabeus, brother of Judas, established a Jewish kingdom that thrived even as the Hellenistic powers around them faltered. Yet, the region's newfound independence would not last forever. By 63 BC, the ever-expanding Roman Republic, under the leadership of Pompey the Great, would arrive at the gates of Jerusalem. The Romans, driven by their ambitions for dominance, brought the Hasmonean dynasty to an abrupt end, turning Judea into a client state of Rome. By the mid-1st century BC, the Roman Republic had grown from a regional power into a mighty empire, and at the heart of its expansion was one man who would forever alter its course, Julius Caesar. Born in 100 BC, Caesar rose through the ranks of Roman politics, quickly making a name for himself as a brilliant military commander and shrewd politician. His early conquests in Gaul brought him immense wealth and loyalty from his legions, and by 60 BC, he had formed the first triumvirate with Pompey the Great and Crassus, securing his influence over Roman affairs.